and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, can you please make sure that your cell phones are either turned off or on silent? Okay, seeing that we have no public comment, I think we're gonna start with a presentation, Mr. Norman.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to bring up Ms. DiBiase for our first presentation of the school year. I'd asked Ms. DiBiase to bring some information regarding our facilities and our technology. Of course, technology, we made a little bit of a shift in terms of the structure of our personnel within the instructional technology department. And, you know, facilities, it's just such a vast space. I thought we got the building project going on, thought it was an appropriate time for Ms. DiBiase to provide some information regarding those two topics. So, turn it over.
So I first wanted to start our conversation with some celebrations of what we've achieved in the buildings during the last year. So I have up there a couple photos of some things from the capital project that are, completed. So of course we had our playground opening, which is really fantastic to see the kids get to start to use that last year. And then also pictured is our elementary library. So you'll see there's new carpeting, a little paint, a little zhuzhing. So, you know, that's just a small piece of the work that's been done over the last year in the buildings. And I wanted to kind of talk about what that means for our crew, because it's a monumental thing to go through a capital project. We know it's disruptive, to our staff and to our students, but it also is a big task for our facilities workers and our grounds and crew. So, who is our crew? That'll be your custodians, your cleaners, your groundskeepers, your maintenance workers. They are really having to coordinate a lot with this capital project. So in the midst of all the rooms not being available and having to kind of get to them as construction allowed, they're finishing our floors, they're doing a deep clean, and a lot of our spaces this particular year, they had to clean those spaces 2 or 3 times because they clean them and then the construction workers go in and have to do their bit, and all of a sudden now there's a bunch of dust and they have to take all the furniture out and go back in and re-clean it. So really just big kudos to the crew. They did a lot of hard work this summer to be able to help us open school on time with things still looking great. And then of course, that's the interior of the building. This year we didn't have a whole lot of work on the exterior of the building, but our grounds crew is also keeping, the fields green during the drought that we have. They're mowing, they're making it look nice so that when kids come back, it's a welcome environment for them to come back into. So just wanted to start tonight's presentation out by saying thank you to those folks. They don't get the summers off, so it's busy for all of us, and they certainly put their time and effort in. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is a general, long-term planning for facilities. What does that look like? So we're in the middle of a capital project. It's in multiple phases. Phase 1 is kind of wrapping up. We're in the middle of phase 2. If we have any potential monies left over from the voter authorization, there may be a phase 3 dependent on that. So fall of 26, we're really looking at phase 2 wrapping up. Then we have what's called a building condition survey. So every 5 years, our architects come in and assess our buildings to put together a list of what are the things that are going into the next capital project. So we're not even done with our ongoing project and we're already looking for what's going into the next one. Then of course in summer of 27 you might have your potential phase 3 depending on what monies may or may not be available. And then already we're talking about potentially having a vote in 2028 for the next capital project. And part of that is based on the flow of the work. The other part of it we talked a little bit about during the budgeting season with how the debt falls off the school district's books and kind of coordinating that debt falling off with new debt coming on to stabilize the building aid for our budgeting process. And that's part of why 2028 would be the next potential date, is trying to marry those two items so that we have some stability in our aid. We talk about the capital project, a lot of work, what it is. Our building is about 275,000 square feet, so it's really quite large. It's a 1/4 mile end to end, so it's good for getting your steps in. And then we also have about 85 acres of grounds that we maintain, which is really great. It gives us a lot of space to have activities for the kids. It's also a lot of work. So these are some of the pictures of, what's happening in the middle of the capital project. What are things looking like? On the left, you've got our auditorium, which is completely torn up right now. We did a lot of ceiling tile, HVAC work, grid work. So, there is that disruption during the capital project, and then at the end, you get that beautiful new auditorium that we're looking forward to. Of course, we've got coming up in the fall the renovations to the community center as well, which will give us that nice new pool, sauna, steam room, all that good stuff. So really looking forward to how that plays out in the end, but still keeping in mind all of these future targets that we're working towards to make sure that we're always moving forward and improving the facilities in the district. So what we're looking for moving forward? First off, we've already made some progress. So we separated our building and grounds department from the transportation department. We've taken in the snow plowing in-house, which gives us a little more control so that when we have snow that's dropping really quickly, we don't have a company come by and do one pass and then still have a bunch of snow left in our lots. By taking it in-house, we have a lot more control of being able to go, we need to get back out there and clear, the lots out again. We also have really reduced repair costs thanks to the skills and knowledge of our personnel. There are a lot of issues that they're able to correct in-house and just order the parts and use their skills and knowledge to correct that for us. So, always a benefit to the district to be able to continue and nurturing that and growing our workforce. For long-range planning, one of the things that we've worked on, and you've seen a little bit in the budgeting of the district as well, is an equipment replacement plan. It's really important for two reasons. One being stabilizing the budget, so you don't want everything breaking at the same time so that you have to spend all of your money in 1 year. And then the other part of it is really assessing what equipment do we need. Is the equipment that we have on hand necessarily something we need to one-to-one replace, or do we need to have a bigger conversation about the current needs of the district and where we're going moving forward? So, just a little bit of that long-range planning so that number one, we're not surprised, number two, we can afford it, and number three, we're really meeting the current needs and not just kind of replacing what's on hand because it's familiar to us. Another thing we've been working on is, increasing our partnerships with our local municipalities like the village. How can we help each other? How can we reduce our overall costs? If we need a piece of equipment, are we able to split those costs, share it with, the village and bill them for the time? Just a way to reduce that burden on the taxpayers for some pieces of equipment that we may only need infrequently, but we still need. We're also working on the grounds area, so how are we doing with our fields? We've brought in a company to look at our fields and assess what we might need to benefit to help the fields stay in good shape longer, easier, without as much maintenance on them. If we have a really dry summer like this summer, is there a certain fertilizer or work that we can do to assist the field in staying green and staying usable for our kids? So another long-range plan of how do we make sure we kind of invest in that and have it available for our kids. And the last thing, not the last, but the last thing on this presentation that we're talking about is looking at energy efficiency. So we spoke a lot during budgeting season about how the utility costs are really skyrocketing right now. So one of the things that we look at is, what can we do within our buildings to make sure that we're using energy efficiently, that we're optimizing what we have, and then of course that we're still keeping things secure while we're doing that. So overall facilities, we're in a good spot. We've made, some good changes, but we're moving forward with trying to increase what we can do internally in-house. Excuse me. So for technology, as Mr. Van Orman mentioned, we changed a little bit of how this department operates in the district. One of the things that additional time and resources will be really critical for is the use of our Smart Schools Bond Act monies. So it's about $1.1 million that's available to the district. To be able to utilize those funds, we have to develop a plan, we have to pass it through a committee, have Board of Education approval, have state approval. It's a bit of a long process, but we do have $1.1 million available. And that money is available for improving security, technology infrastructure, and technology access for our students. So we already have pretty good access, but there are some security and infrastructure items that we can work on with these monies to be able to give our students better opportunities here. One thing I do want to stress is that these are one-time funds. So once they are spent, they are spent. The state has no future plans for, as of right now, for reissuing additional Smart Schools monies, but they are available to us. One other item that we introduced this year is what's called Schedule N, and basically what that is we can use up to $35,000 per year that the state will reimburse us for on security improvements like cameras. So instead of waiting, same concept as that equipment replacement plan for facilities, instead of potentially having a bunch of cameras that we need to replace all at once or maybe a high cost, planning that replacement out through the use of the Schedule N money so that we're basically $0 year to year with that reimbursement. We've also conducted some software analysis and review, and that really is to say, what are people using? What are they asking for? Who's using it? What is the impact on students? What's the academic data that we're getting? What's our return on investment for that software? So that's something that we're continuing to do on an annual basis to make sure that what we're using is aligned with our curriculum and our academic plans. And then I spoke about it a little bit with Schedule N, but for all of our technology equipment, developing that equipment replacement plan so that we are not having those budgetary spikes that we spoke about a couple years ago, and then also not having old equipment, being able to replace it timely and being able to have it available for our students. One last thing that we're looking to do in the capital project process is continue to identify potential scope. So there are a lot of technology upgrades that are available to us. Some of them cost more money, so they wouldn't be appropriate for a budgetary improvement. It would be more appropriate for a capital project improvement when we talk about that technology infrastructure. So that can be things like upgrading the cabling in the district, upgrading internet access, switching over in some areas. We do have fiber, but expanding that fiber access. So those are things that with this we're looking forwards with to say what are the smart investments as a district to keep us on that cutting edge with technology so that our students are always at that forefront. And then of course supporting our students and staff with more time available, being able to actually get to those tickets, get to those concerns and address them more quickly and timely for folks. And then the last thing I have here for looking forward is keeping our eye on those innovative technologies. So the big one that we've all heard and are talking about is artificial intelligence and what that impact is for schools, what that impact is for teachers and students. So being able to evaluate that, assess it, keep current with it so that we're not falling behind in those areas as new technologies are introduced is really important for the long-term health of the district and the department. So, those are the overviews of where we're going in the future with these two departments. They're big departments. We know that we're always having more needs within our buildings, within our grounds, within technology. Those things aren't going away. And what's really critical for us is lacing those in with our long-term planning strategies so that they're not left behind in the process of capital project planning or future planning for the district. Does anyone have any questions?
But can you talk more about any discussions around the security upgrade planning?
So some of the security upgrade planning that we're looking towards would be, we have an outdated PA system. So updating that so that, for instance, if somebody needed to call an emergency, they could do that from any room. Now, I do want to stress that we have that capability currently through the TAP app. So anyone from their phone or their district issued device, like their Chromebook, if there was some sort of security concern, could already do that. But it just builds in that additional extra layer. Door access controls, making sure that those are tied in. We've also done a lot of work with the SROs and the sheriff's office as far as integrating our systems with their systems, so that if something were to happen, they would be able to, for example, unlock or lock doors, identify where something is happening within our building. So those are just some important integrations that we can do to make sure that everything is secure at all times.
Other questions? I just have one quick question.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, kudos on the pictures, they're always good. The $35,000, does that have to be in the same category once you start spending it, or it could be different year to year? Like if you start spending it on cameras, does it have to be until everything's upgraded, or?
So there are some limited uses for those funds, so typically, they're allocated for security cameras, metal detectors, and door hardening. Typically, what we would use it for is cameras, partially because of the price of those other items. So, you know, in our capital outlay, we do that $100,000 improvement. Door hardening is very expensive, so you would likely exceed that $35,000, which is why we would allocate it for cameras, so that we're then able to maximize that and maybe do those other activities through a capital outlay where we're getting that aid on the full $100,000 instead of spending it in Schedule N and missing out on that portion that exceeds the
Well, so that was the reason I was asking. So for example, metal detectors, we're obviously not gonna put metal detectors at every entrance for $35,000. So
Yep.
it's not gonna be something that we could bank towards something that was more expensive. It needs to be spent. Okay,
Yep,
okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other questions?
Do you have a method to see the usage for Chromebooks on a daily basis?
We do, so we do have, you know, several things that track who's logging in, what they're using, things like that. I will say that that hasn't been something that has necessarily been reviewed in aggregate, but definitely something that we would have the capabilities to do now that the department structure has changed a little bit.
It would be interesting to see who's actually using them for the purposes and for how long, because right now, as you know, every student brings home. And do they really use it at home? No, they're a charging device. So would it make sense to go to the Chromebook charger, the Chrome cards, rather than individual?
Okay.
Just something to think about.
Other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's a good presentation.
Yeah, it's great.
Hopefully some information in there that you weren't aware of, and, you know, just kind of keep everybody up to date on some of that work, so.
All right. We're gonna move on to, see the minutes of the last meeting, August 20th. Could I have a motion, please? Mrs. Kaiser, second by Mrs. Dingman. Any questions, corrections? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay, moving on. I take a motion for financial reports for Mrs. Dingman.
I'll make a motion D1 through 5.
Thank you. Second, Mrs. Decker. Questions? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Right, Mrs. Kaiser?
Make a motion for E 1 through 5.
I have a second for that. Mrs. Allen? This is a pretty big list, so if there needs to be an exception because someone is related to someone or something, let me know. Any questions on this group? When you're ready.
Mrs. Decker? Yes. Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Dingman?
Yes.
Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Foltz? Yes. And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, F, new business. A motion,
I'll make a motion F1 through 5.
thank you, in a second. Mrs. Foltz. Any questions on this group? We did have a late question that, I'll get an answer out to. This is obviously a first reading on, some of these policies, so there's an opportunity to still have discussion later on if necessary.
I had thoughts on a policy. I wasn't really sure how we were gonna structure this, cause I know before we would like bring our thoughts and then
Mhm.
discuss. 6110 is the policy, that I was looking at. I guess the part that we're adding in, I'm wondering who would be determining, or who would be looking at this. So it talks about like violations. Who would be the person in charge of determining that?
Can you clarify where you are? I'm sorry.
Are
Just
you-
the blue part in
Are
general.
you looking at to make some bad behavior and wondering if I'm gonna be the person to determine
No,
if
it
your
just
behavior's bad?
doesn't specify, so it's kind of just a question that I was
Yeah.
looking at, and then, I personally don't love the wording of it. I feel like, because it applies to all district personnel, I would be concerned kind of with the subjectiveness of the wordings that staff might not feel like they could have opinions or have concerns without retaliation. So,
Do you mean from that whole section?
yeah.
Mrs. Decker?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I guess I'm kind of also just wondering where it came from, because I know what your email, I know where it came from, but I guess other boards are not including this, and in fact are taking some sections out of this policy, specifically the last section. Quite a few local districts have taken that out, but I have not seen anyone adding this particular section in.
But the black is remaining though, correct, the
Yeah,
penalties?
no, that's a section that a handful of districts locally have taken out. So, I have concerns with the wording, I don't love it, and I don't see any other districts putting it in, so I question whether or not it's necessary. I know the policy committee has made a point of trying to remove parts of policies that are not necessary, especially if they're covered already in, other laws and regulations. So I would hate to see us add an unnecessary part of a policy in that could make staff feel like they don't have a voice or can't express concerns.
Can we break this down a little bit just between the
Sure.
two sections? So can we go to the behavior section for a moment? So you use the word retaliation. Is there a specific sentence or phrase that you feel like leads to that?
So I guess, let's see, so the second sentence, shall refrain from engaging in any action that breaches public trust or confidence. I feel like that's super vague. Like if a teacher speaks up because they feel like something is not appropriate in school or not being done in the best interest of students, if one person says, well, that breaches public trust because they're speaking up against what the district is doing, but another person says, well, what the district is doing isn't right, I feel like that should be a discussion that's able to be had and not something that teachers feel like, well, if I breached public trust by disagreeing with the district, I could be penalized, fined, suspended, removed from my position.
So I hear what you're saying. I think in looking over this again right now, I believe that I can understand that, but I think that would only apply to A. I feel like, as far as breaking an oath of office, a policy, a law, I feel like those are less controversial because they're pretty
Right.
clear cut.
I would agree with that, except that, like I said, policy committee has removed pieces from policies if they're already noted in other policies, law, regulations. Like we have made a point of pulling those pieces out of policies because it just ends up being redundant.
So your concern is redundancy to what? Another policy?
I mean, it cites oath of office policy, law, rule, regulations, fiduciary duties. Those are already things that are written out for any board member or staff member. So I feel like it's redundant. I don't love it. I don't think it's necessary.
Could you cite the policies that you're referring to?
Whatever policy this is referring to, I guess is what I'm saying. Like if it's already written in a policy, why are we saying that if they violate policy?
I believe you said it was redundant, but where is the redundancy?
I guess that's where we're looking for, that she's looking for clarification on, is it somewhere else where it's already covered?
Is it in another policy?
Is it in another policy?
I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
I'm interpreting Ms. Decker's statements to just be the broad sense of the word policy. Right,
Correct.
like any policy
Right.
or any law, as opposed to a specific one that
Correct.
may or may not be listed.
See, I saw that more as a reference as opposed to a redundancy. I do see your point with A, that I think, again, that's the only one for me that would necessarily stick out. But so I guess to answer your other question, and I don't have your lovely color-coded chart, but this language came from
BS and K.
Okay. So,
I feel like A can be subjective. Really. I also feel like all board members and employees must clearly distinguish personal views from those of the district can also be kind of sticky, because I don't feel like any of us, when we're having conversations in a community, saying my personal view is, or my board member, you know what I mean? Like,
oh man, Mrs. Decker, I feel like that's an everyday occurrence for me. Only because I think a lot of times we go, just so you know, I'm saying this as a parent. I'm not saying this as a board member or vice versa.
I actually had asterisked that line because I wanted just clarity of like what that means.
Well, to me, it means like you couldn't go out in public and say,
The board feels.
yeah, the board feels or the district feels, because no, Kim feels. You see what I'm saying? Like if you go out to the soccer field and say, the district feels that the field isn't mowed enough, or the board thinks the field is not mowed enough. Well, that's not the view of the board, that would be the view of you. If you're gonna state something, you have to make it clear that it's your personal feeling, not the Board of Education or the Red Creek School District thinks.
I just think it's vague, and like I said, I don't see it as being a necessary change, especially given that no other surrounding districts that use Erie
Those are
One.
all of the Wayne County districts.
I looked through maybe like a dozen, and I didn't see anybody that's adding this in. The only change that I saw was that they were taking out the penalty section, or I think one or two of them took out everything from investments in conflict with official duties down out.
But Superintendent Venorman said that this came from the attorney, not Erie One, the board-appointed attorney. So
Right.
are you asking to go against the board-appointed attorney's opinion?
I guess I'm wondering why specifically Red Creek would be changing this if it's not, like, we pay Erie One for a service to come up with our, policies for us. So I guess I'm not understanding why Red Creek is going against the service that we pay for.
But besides the Erie One, we also vet things through the attorney. And the attorney is the one that defends us or represents us when something happens.
Maybe there's, I'm guessing, but maybe, for example, if one of our neighboring districts is also using the same attorney, which I know is true, maybe they're not under review of this policy currently. So maybe that could be a reason why maybe this language wasn't added in, and the next time it comes about to be reviewed by their school attorney, it could. We're not all necessarily on the same schedule for review of policies.
Was there a particular reason why this one was not, so this is the first reading and the last updated date was 18. I don't remember without looking back through notes why this one was skipped in the 6,000.
It was not, so this is not a policy, this is not a manual review policy. This is a non-manual review policy. So this is just one that BSNK apparently said, please change this.
Yeah.
This for Red Creek.
Right, you know, to the comment on the vagueness, I think oftentimes when you look at policy, you don't want something to pigeonhole us one way or another, so there needs to be some, I'll say, openness within the policy. We can have a discussion maybe about, is this too much, is this not enough, right? Like, but there needs to be direction and guidelines for within the policy, but not so concrete that it's so restrictive that it can only apply to situation A and not
Right.
situation B, C, and D. You know, I often think sometimes when these kind of things come up, when it's outside of Erie One, maybe it's because there's a certain situation that a district might be dealing with. I'm not using that I'm more as a hypothetical at this point, but certain conversations occur and then BS&K or legal counsel says, oh, we have a recommendation on that. Here's what this is, because they don't work in conjunction with Erie One. So Erie 1 gives us the template, but I think if we reviewed our policies that are strictly from Erie 1 and compared them against some of our neighboring districts, there might be some discrepancies within those as well based on internal operations or structures or historical information or past circumstances or histories within an individual district that may have an impact on specific language within the policy. So they're not, Erie 1 recommends to us updates to our policies. We are not, oftentimes, we still have some internal control over what else goes in or what else comes out of those policies.
I just looked real quick, April 23rd of 25 is when this one was last reviewed.
Yeah,
So it's first reading with this revision for,
right, everything in black was reapproved, for lack of a better phrase, back in April.
So 5 months ago.
We have policies that we adopted over the summer that need to be updated, so that's not abnormal. And
My personal opinion, I guess, is just that I don't ever wanna see us in a position where we're making staff feel like they have to walk on eggshells or they can't express concerns or opinions, and I feel like the wording in this could do that. And so I would like it if we look at the wording and maybe adjust it so that it doesn't read like that, but that's just my opinion on it.
I could get behind that, for the behavior section, but just for A. I don't, I think the rest of it is pretty clear. And I just don't think that there's enough gray in the rest of it, and I hear what you're saying about redundancy, but I don't see that in the rest of it. I see it as more of a reference. And, we often would have policies or procedures that reference each other, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. Just my opinion.
And I don't necessarily think, like the basis of it is having constructive discussions, using good judgment, and maintaining professionalism, which, as a board member, an employee, whether you're a teacher, an admin, whatever, like that's the expectation, right? Everyone maintains professionalism, even if you're mad or upset about something or you have a disagreement, you still maintain professionalism. So I think that it could be, like it could be taken either way, like depending on, like we might think something seems unprofessional, but Mr. Van Orman doesn't, or an administrator might think something's unprofessional, we don't. So, I think that could maybe be fine-tuned a little bit, but I think the whole basis of it is you maintain professionalism in the role that you're in.
I think there's an attempt, and maybe it could be more clear, based on what I'm hearing. I think there was an attempt to also link employee behavior to the same code of conduct that we expect our students to follow as well. We're all under the same umbrella, we're all under the same building, and having a clear path towards what those expectations look like would be consistent.
Especially when the idea would be for all adults to lead by example.
Which is in here.
I would agree that I think A is very subjective. I would be on board with looking at rewording that, so.
Just to be more clear.
Yeah, cause I mean, who decides, that's really, like, who decides who breaches public trust, right? I mean,
What public too?
what public, are we serving? I mean,
How
like,
many
it's
public?
just very, yeah.
How many? Yeah, that's a good point. Other
I mean,
thoughts?
we're not voting on this anyway.
No, this is
so
just a
it's
first reading, but because the way that we have the policy committee set up right now, it's good to ask these questions. The next one would be a second for approval.
And these are the types of conversations, those folks that haven't been a part of the policy committee meetings in the past, these are the types of conversations that would come up oftentimes before it would get to the entire board. maybe the value in having the policy committee set up the way that it's set up this year is it allows these conversations to be more holistic in their approach and more public, so that there's some transparency in what's being discussed and the steps going forward, so.
Anyone
And
else
we
with
can reach some consensus on the same night, because a lot of times we would be like, well, this needs to be a full board discussion, and then we would have to
Yep.
table it, so.
Let's cross our fingers. Any other thoughts on this one? Okay, so, if you could, bring back,
Yep.
thoughts or rewording on A. I don't think I hear a majority for the rest of the behavior piece, unless I'm. Okay, again, this will still come out on the next packet, so we have an opportunity to ask more questions or give more thought. If we'd like to, okay? Mrs. Decker, remind me about the last part that you mentioned.
The penalties.
The penalties, but
Oh.
that's already existing language.
Okay, so was there something with that?
I just was pointing out that other districts locally had pulled that piece.
Chances are it's in there because when something does happen,
You need some parameter somewhere.
somebody can't say, I didn't know that I could be fined, suspended, or removed from my position if I broke the code of ethics. And so when somebody is asking, where is this documented? You should know. I believe all of your employees indicate that they have access to the board policies, review them. And
Handbook, right.
And in the handbook. So this is just one thing that indicates, yes, you were aware, and here's the penalty.
May, potential,
From personal
May.
experience.
right? I think the key word in there is may,
Mhm.
right? It's not
Will.
a promise, it's a potential.
Other thoughts? Okay. Other thoughts on 1 through 5? You ready?
Mrs. Foltz? Yes. Mrs. Allen? Yes. Mrs. Kaiser?
Yes.
Mrs. Jason?
Aye.
Mr. Joyce?
Yes.
Mrs. Decker?
Yes.
And Mrs. Madigan?
Yes, thank you. Okay, moving on, thank you to the administrative team for the reports. Mr. Nash, thank you for your first report. We'll let the harassment start next month. But you did a great job, so thank you for sending that in, ahead of time. Anything on either one of G1 and 2?
I have something for our student member. It wasn't mentioned, but how are students doing without cell phones this year?
I think that they.
Aiden, be aware that your peers are in the room here. We're now eyeballing you.
I think most of them are getting well. I don't see it a lot of like, I don't see them like needing, like wanting their phone in class because they're able to pay attention. But,
Don't pay attention to them. It's okay.
Do you think it's easier today than it was day one?
For me, yes. I don't know about everybody else. I do think there's still people who don't turn in their phones.
Mhm.
I think a lot of it's, they keep it in their backpacks just because for themselves, it's like their security, they know where it is, they can reach it whenever they want. I don't know if they're using them in between periods because it's three minutes, so you don't have a ton of time to do that. But I do think they're starting to adjust.
Do you find that people maybe during lunch are having more conversations with each other?
So the way my lunch is that I have to leave like a couple minutes like right after lunch starts because I have a class that I have to go to. So I don't get to see it as much, but from the small amount that I have running it, I think once people find tables and groups to sit with, they're interacting with.
Okay.
Is there a potential that Mr. Nash has breached public trust just now, as I see?
I think that was a fair representation.
There's no survey. So,
Thanks.
thank
And-
you, Mrs. Hank.
Do we feel like people are a little bit more engaged in class without the distraction?
I think so,
Okay, good.
yeah.
At least in the
That's the
classes
goal,
that he's
right?
in.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Aiden didn't list on here, which is completely fine, but I think it's appropriate. So tomorrow, Aiden has another opportunity to go down to Wayne Finger Lakes BOCES with the rest of the student board reps from across our region for a statewide Zoom session tomorrow morning from like 8 to 9. And then from 9 to 11 tomorrow, Aiden and his peers from the other districts will engage in some more leadership work from across the region with the same group that Aiden had an opportunity to meet and work with over the summer. It's part of that continuing leadership training series. So, great opportunity for Aiden and the rest of them to kind of learn and talk from each other. So,
Could I ask another question about the student parking lot spots for the seniors? Do you have to have a rendering first to show somebody what you're going to be painting?
Yeah, it was in our, like, draft to Mr. Norman that, you had to show in color of, like, a sketch of
Okay,
your painting.
and they're busy doing that, started the other day.
Yeah, so we actually had to cancel last Sunday, cause we thought it would rain, last Sunday.
Yep.
So we're doing it this Saturday,
Okay,
you know.
that's exciting.
Yeah, I hear that a new staff member is gonna be providing food for you. Is that Dr. Bristol?
Yeah.
I don't think that that's a bad thing.
Well, I can't wait to see pictures. of them.
That's very exciting.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mr. Nash.
thank you.
Okay, Mr. Van Orman, did you have anything that you needed to?
yeah, I guess I'll just piggyback a little bit on some of the board's questions to Aiden regarding, cell phones. Obviously, it was new. I would kind of reiterate many of Aiden's sentiments. I give props to the students for their ability to comply and to work on maybe kind of this new. They weren't sure what it was going to look like. They weren't sure how it was going to feel. Overall, it's been pretty good. Very few, if any, cell phone infraction kind of situations. The lock boxes are doing okay. There's some students that are indicating that they are leaving their phones maybe in their car or at their home, so they don't need to turn those items in. But we're getting them turned in. There's no loss of instruction time. They're turning them in before the bell rings. They're picking them up without a loss of instruction. So, which was important to us, not to have students lose instructional time for logistical purposes. As we had mentioned previously throughout the course of this process, I think it's important for us to remember that we may need to review our policy as we get into the details on these things, and our protocols. Are they working? Are they not working? Do we need to make adjustments? So that's going to be an ongoing process, and as we, through constant communication, both with the students and the faculty and the staff, and our implementation process, like, is it meeting our goals and objectives? Do we need to make adjustments? Do we need to make changes? And from the policy level, if there are changes to those things, we would bring them back to this group, just like we just had a conversation 5 minutes ago with. So, anytime you have a first initiative like this across the state with something big and so broad, sometimes you don't get all the finer details ironed out right away. So I think it's important for us through communication and awareness to stay on top of those. So it seems to be going okay, would be my perception of that. So yeah. We didn't know what to expect, but on day one it was not Armageddon, right? There was,
So watching the other students in the audience when Aiden talks and then when you talk, it's just an interesting concept. They didn't act like it was Armageddon though, so I think we're safe. Anything else, sir?
Nothing else at this time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move on. If you look at I-1, the meeting schedule, I had sent out a note that we were gonna have a quick discussion on this. So I know there's been, you know, for the years that I've been on the board, the time and the day has been almost every day of the week except for Friday, thank goodness. And could be any time, you know, after 4 o'clock. And so that's obviously.
7 a.m. we've done.
Right, so, so Mrs. Kaiser and I had a conversation about, one, if there was an opportunity to potentially move meetings up, we now have a student representative, which changes things.
Soon
and
to be a
potential-
second.
Right, so that changes the dynamic a little bit. What does that look like? And then also, in the discussion with Mrs. Kaiser and Mr. Van Orman, there are, tend to be from time to time conflicts with the school calendar as well. So I know that in my time on the board, there have been scheduled board meetings that are scheduled in July that might have a concert date on it. And, you know, if there's not a parent on the board that was going to that concert, it's not really a big deal. But if there is, then it is a big deal. You know, Mrs. Decker, I'm going to pick on you for a second, but having a senior basketball player last year when it's like the longest season in history, you know, it was sometimes complicated for you to be able to get to those things and be here as a board member. So I appreciate your effort in that. But anyway, reading nights with Mr. Poole at the elementary, there's just a slew of things that end up coming up and being part of the calendar after we make this in July. So the suggestion was made, I think, for Mrs. Kaiser to look at the schedule for dates quarterly instead of all at one point, to see if there were any conflicts, and the potential to move the time up to possibly make things a little bit easier for a student rep that might also have a job and have homework, other obligations, things like that. So just wanted to have a discussion about that and see what that looks like. I know it's hard, you know, when they're on your calendar for the year and you just have to miss one, it happens. We all miss board meetings from time to time, but I just didn't know if that's something that would be of interest, and if we wanted to discuss that. So there are all parents on this board, and we do have other obligations, and we also, I know that we're all very engaged people with the district, so looking for feedback.
So I went through the calendar and I believe it was up through the November meeting that there was nothing on the district calendar that was sent out to everyone that was a conflict. Now, without having an indoor track or a wrestling schedule or basketball schedule, I couldn't really go any farther. But that was kind of where I stopped it, and then we discussed, you know, maybe quarterly looking at it, because obviously if there's a track meet or a basketball game or a wrestling meet or you know, a concert or anything, we all have kids in different buildings, so there's potentially someone is going to miss something if there's something scheduled on a night of a board meeting. So the thought would be to, once some of those winter activities, that schedule came out, kind of relook again from like December to March, and then potentially look at like March to the end of the year.
I think the thought process too was, I think, is indoor track like on Tuesday or something, okay. So if there was something that there was some sort of cancellation because of maybe like school's canceled or something and it's moved, I know nothing about track, so maybe it wouldn't get moved to a Wednesday, but if it were moved to a Wednesday, could we be flexible in order to make sure that we're able to do both if possible, because we all have, you know, students that are involved. Same thing necessarily if there's UPK night and it's moved to a Wednesday, could we be flexible in trying to do that? So
I'd be fine with that. I'm looking at a quarterly would be fine with me. I mean, I have to juggle no matter what, so I think everyone here does, so that works for me.
Well, the goal really is just essentially so nobody has to, like, choose between, am I coming to a board meeting or am I going to my kid's basketball game? Or am I missing the reading night, or, you know, even for Aiden, I have a massive test that I have to study for, so I don't fail in my life. I'm just saying, like, all of those things that, you know, everybody has other stuff going on, but try to make it so you don't miss other things as well.
There are just a couple legal requirements that we need to make sure we hit when we're talking about dates around our board meetings. Of course, the reorg meeting has a specific timeline that we have to hit. In October, we have to make sure we hit a deadline to accept the state auditor's reports. We have to hold a budget hearing in advance of certain specific amount of days prior to the budget vote, which is a fixed date across New York State. So there is some flexibility within days and times, but some of those things do have some legal constraints around them. We can't just willy-nilly pick some dates.
Well, I think the
Yeah.
idea would be stick with what we have structured out right now. I mean, the chance of having to move every single one of them is not very high. So like,
But if the Christmas concert ends up on December 17th, would we be flexible so parents of kids of 3 through 5 could attend
Right.
and still
but
be
didn't
able
we
to?
already-
Why are concerts being scheduled on a
Yeah.
board meeting?
Well, I'm just using a concert as an example because they
Something
have
gets
overlap that
changed,
sometimes when there's been a
something
change.
canceled and
Right,
rescheduled.
yeah, I think we already looked at the district calendar as best as we could. We're really kind of just talking about sports stuff at this point, right? Because everything is already on the district calendar. We already reviewed that when we approved this schedule.
We certainly have more flexibility on the district-wide events or the building-wide events than like the October 15th deadline for the state audit, right, for example. But there are opportunities for like a snow date or a rescheduled date, those kind of things. And there's just a lot of events and activities across all 3 buildings, whether they're extracurricular or part of our academic programming that somebody's going to be involved with, right?
No problem reviewing. quarterly. So we're good through November, is that?
Yeah,
That's as far as I went
If you
through
look-
November.
And I think it's just have a discussion about it. If it's a concern, somebody could bring something up. If an indoor track event gets moved, could the rest of the board accommodate it? So, Kim could make it, I don't know if anybody else runs track, but I know her daughter does. Or if something changes, you know, I think it's just, as long as we're meeting our legal requirements, trying to be flexible, to accommodate everybody so that they can still feel involved. When we reduce the meetings to once a month, that's potentially a lot to miss that we could discuss at one meeting. So it's just a thought. So nothing that we need to do anything about.
I understand, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, can I just ask, and maybe other people don't feel this way, but if we're gonna move them up days like we did, could we maybe move the packet coming out up a day also? Cause I felt like my weekend was like slam packed and having it come Friday and then meeting Tuesday was
That's
a
understandable.
lot to squeeze in, so I
Yep.
know it won't always
But
be
we always
possible,
have
but
to have
if it
the
is.
questions in anyways, like, weren't the questions needing to be in?
What she's saying is she lost the day because it went out on Friday.
But you're still supposed to have the
Oh, to
questions
have them in by Monday. Yeah.
Like, we didn't say questions need to be in by Sunday,
I
right?
see what you're saying.
I mean, putting the packet out a day early doesn't affect me
If we
either way, I'm
can.
just saying.
If it's not possible or if it's too
If we
much
end up
of
moving
a
a
jump
meeting,
for them,
just keep
that's
that
okay,
in mind.
Just made a note.
I
And there's one
understand.
more Tuesday on the schedule too, already set.
Yeah.
Later
Yes.
in the year, so like for
Yep.
that one, that would be applicable. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that we all have to be flexible, and I'm very supportive of changing a board meeting. However, I did make it known that I can't attend 2 meetings that were scheduled. And I'm not gonna use the word I was dismissed, but it was, okay. But when we have 2 other members or another member that needs to make it because they have another obligation, it's being asked to change a date.
I can appreciate that. I thought that our dates were adjusted around those. Which ones are those, Nancy?
I am not going to be here on the 15th or on the 8th of April.
April. The
15th of October
Okay.
or the
Sorry.
8th
Well,
of,
there's a 15th of April, so when you said,
we don't have
15th
it.
of every month.
We don't,
I thought we were making.
you're good.
okay. I can't read that fast. Okay. All right, well, that's the next meeting. So is there,
I
is
will
there,
not be here.
right, is there an adjustment that we can make to the 15th date?
Without in that calendar.
Are you here
Put it all
all
day
day
when my desk at school.
Nope,
Okay, that sounds like it could be fun.
it's going to be great. So I'm not asking to move. I'm just indicating I will not be here.
Okay.
For the
If we
audit
move
committee
that,
meeting.
we'll have to
Aiden, I will
also,
give you all of my questions that I have though, so then you can sound super smart to ask, okay?
Perspective,
I feel like
we can
Aiden's
go up
sweating.
or down on the calendar.
well, we can't go past the 15th,
So we'd need to go before.
but it would also depend at this point on the availability of the auditor and their ability to come present that information.
So I'm not asking for it to be moved. I just would like,
Yeah, I'm just
make my point.
providing
appreciate what you're saying.
the totality of information.
Let's set that down for right now, because it's gonna be, everybody's gonna need to check their calendar and everything, so let's come back to that. I'll send out some information regarding that, of what the options are, and then we'll look at April 15th as well. Are you available?
April 8th.
It says April 15th,
Oh, well
We have a
then,
board meeting. We have a workshop on the 8th.
so are you not
Oh, the
available for the?
budget workshop.
oh, that's not a mandatory event.
You don't want me to attend, John? I don't have to.
Just not a, it's not a recognized board meeting.
I said meeting.
Nancy, thank you.
You're welcome.
Please don't tell her she doesn't have to come.
We don't have to mind crossing it off.
Yeah, cause Stephanie just crossed it right off her list, so now she's not coming either. Okay, thank you for the discussion. Number 2, the board handbook and the onboarding resource, for board members. Was a lot to digest. I wanna say thank you to Mrs. Fold, cause she worked very diligently. I think that we tried to attack it as best as possible. When you're, looking at the documents that I sent out, there were, options to put your comments in. What?
Think.
That was, no, that was a side eye from somewhere. No, what?
Oh, just,
You were like, whoa, that looks great. You don't have to write that down, I can feel it.
I did say, this looks great.
The couple pieces that, correct me if I'm wrong, are in red, in the handbook section, were, for example, something, there's a section about the history of the Red Creek School District. Mr. Van Orman is gonna be providing that, so there will be updates to it so that we can add into that section. I know that a couple people had made their notes the first time that we tried to complete this last year, so thank you for that. I think that, I think we did a pretty good chunk of it, so I hope you guys are happy with what you see. I know that it was a lot to get through. The idea would be, if you have questions or we wanna have a discussion right now, that would be great. I would like to complete this, if we can, the next time we meet. So, if anything stands out, you know, please say something now, but I'm also wondering, did everybody have a chance to get through it and take a look at it?
we just got it like 2 days ago.
Well, it's not the first time you saw it either.
No,
You saw it last year.
I had a lot to say last year about it.
I looked through it briefly, but I thought when we talked about this before, we talked about like pairing off. So after you guys were done, I thought we were gonna pair off another 2 or 3 people to
We're
look
gonna buddy
through
up.
it.
Yeah, which,
Are we still
so,
doing that?
so here's the problem I see with that though, that
Okay.
puts us at potentially finishing it in January. So,
I mean, if 2 people do it this month, that would be October, and then the last 3 could do it for November.
well, if
right?
if we do 3 for that, but if we can make the commitment to do that, then that would be fine. I'm just a little bit worried about when we tried to do this, it never actually got completed.
Either that or there's 4 weeks until the next meeting, so 2 people spend 2 weeks on it and the last 3, like we could put it through to October if we didn't wanna push it out,
If you-
otherwise November.
And I'm not
November's
trying to
better than
rush it,
January.
it's just, I'd like to get it done, you know what I mean, because this was a goal that we weren't able to complete last year.
Or could we maybe push off the discussion until next meeting, cause I skimmed through it, but I thought that we were splitting it up, so I didn't like put a bunch of notes on.
No, that's okay.
So,
So part of the problem with the comment section, or even if we split it off, and Mrs. Holtz and I spoke about this, so let's just say that the first section of the handbook talks about the history of the Red Creek School District. And so Mrs. Folds and I take the time and put it in there and, okay, here's the comment section. But the next group is Mrs. Decker and Mr. Joyce, and they're like, ugh, this is terrible. This should be completely changed, and let's take that out. How are we gonna communicate that in order to not just replace
Yeah.
the work that somebody else
That's a
did?
good point, because we don't wanna be ineffective with the time spent.
And keep,
Right.
Could there be some consensus around the formatting at this point, right? Like the headings, the topics, because the inserted information,
so that's actually the only, that was already agreed upon,
Okay.
working off of what
Like it was already
examples
almost
we
done.
had.
perfect, good job, team.
Yeah, we're overachievers.
So I'm
Um,
wondering why, if we couldn't, just give to the next meeting, and I know that puts us through potentially to December, but people going through and making their own comments, and then that can guide our discussion in November.
Yeah.
And then by going through each comment, so we're working through it together, and then at that point, we can make the updates and approve for December.
In theory, like coupling up sounds amazing, but it
I
just might
think
be
it's-
counterproductive.
Yeah, gonna be a mess if we try to do that.
You also have to try to, Stephanie and I, there were many times when we just couldn't find the time to actually speak together and go through it, so, bless you. I'm okay with that if we just, we could commit to the dates and putting your comments in there, but only use them as comments, and then we just have to facilitate a way to either pull those together or decide what we're gonna use. Maybe kind of the style of how we do, evaluations at the end of the year. It could say, okay, well, here are the 4 comments about the history section, let's mesh these together and this is what we add in,
Right.
if that would work. Is that okay? Okay.
I do wanna say though, that when I flipped through this, every time that I flipped the page, I was like, oh my gosh, that's great information to put in here, so you guys really.
And a lot
It
of
was
this
awesome.
stuff
Thanks.
we'll link to instead of putting the actual documents in there. We just wanted to put the documents in so you could see.
Yeah, so you didn't have to do it.
Yeah.
That's nice, yeah.
So, and the one thing that Mr. Van Orman brought up is that, so if an agenda looks different next year, it links to the updated agenda for that board. But that was gonna be a pain if you guys had to keep going back and forth, like Mrs. Foltz had just said. Okay, so let's try to say if we could get our comments in within the next 2 weeks. Is that fair? Okay. So if you have any problems using that document, let me know. Actually, let Mrs. Foltz know, cause she's great at that and she started it, so. Any questions on anything else? Anybody wanted to share anything about anything else on the documents?
Well, that was just ongoing, but what about the handbook? Do we, same
It's the same,
concept?
yeah, if that's okay.
Nope, perfect.
And it's set up just the same way, so, feel free to put any comments in. Or if stuff that we're missing, just add it to the end or something.
Yep.
We need to work on a section for a student board member, in there, which we haven't done yet, cause we're still kind of fine tuning if we have 1, if we have 2, how that's all working out, so, but this should be a living document. I mean, almost every district that I've looked at has said that, update it, use ideas, hopefully new board members will also help to add more information that you potentially could use. Okay, anything else tonight? Take a motion to adjourn, please. Mrs. Dingman, and a second by Mrs. Kaiser. Thank you very much. See somebody with an administrative tag to sign your stuff, so you get credit.
Katie, don't forget to sign in.